What's up and welcome to DevPath. So you're looking to level up with Copilot? Well, you're in the right spot. Today's video is jam-packed with tips, tricks, and all sorts of resources to help take your usage of GitHub Copilot and VS Code to the next level. So let's dive in. Okay, so I've got the example project pulled up here. There's a bunch of resources to dive into. What we're going to do, we're going to dig into the new agent mode and just generally how to use GitHub Copilot effectively. So we put together a lot of nice documentation for this. I'll put a link in the description to the GitHub repo for this. We've got how to use GitHub Copilot from start to finish, and we've got an example tutorial that we can run through showing how to build a simple REST API, generates a random meme and delivers back to the user. And so we've got kind of the typical format you might be used to running through a tutorial or docs when you're getting up to speed with a new library or something. But then we also have put example prompts that you might use with Copilot along the way to kind of start getting you thinking about how you can prompt Copilot to do some of the heavy lifting for you. So we'll go through some basic functionality and then we'll dive in and build out this little REST API example. And we're even going to generate some unit tests at the end. So we'll create a meme endpoint, delivers a random meme message, and show you how to use Copilot to generate unit tests. So with that, let's dive into the main README here. Okay, and just take a quick glance through. I'm not going to read through all of this. You can get get a clone of the repo and dig into it for yourself, but I'm going to cover some high level key points here. So for one, obviously you need to make sure you've got GitHub installed and VS Code installed. So if you don't have that, go get that. Now, there's two extensions in terms of Copilot that you're going to want to make sure you have: the main GitHub Copilot and then also GitHub Copilot Chat. Okay, so make sure you've got these. They are installed and enabled. Okay, and that's all we're really going to need for that. And then what you'll end up with is this chat icon to get into chat mode. Now, the other thing is you want to make sure you've got agent mode enabled so that you get this little drop down. If yours just says ask and edit, then you're going to want to go to your settings, VS Code settings, and just search for Copilot agent. And boom, that'll bring up these settings here. Now, you probably don't have the thinking tool enabled. I just enabled that myself, but you do need to make sure you've got this one right here. Check this box so that you have agent enabled. And you might want to check this one too if it's not, so that agent can run tasks. Okay, so that's making sure that you've got Copilot set up and agent mode enabled. We've got our extensions installed. Let's get back to our general overview. So, table of contents, we've put a lot of tips together here. Getting it set up, some key features, obviously it'll give you suggestions as you type. That's nothing new. The agent mode is more the new functionality we want to dig into the most. But if you're just getting started with Copilot, we'll go through the basics as well. So using the new agent feature, there's some information here on how to get that set up. Essentially, I just showed you. You can also Command-Shift-P if you're on a Mac and search for Copilot agent, and you can get suggestions here as well. So I already have agent enabled, but it's giving me tasks that I might have it do. I'm just going to get out of that, But just so you know, you can get to it from the command palette. All right, tips and tricks for power use. So this is the beginning of all sorts of tips we've put together to help you get the most out of Copilot. Use comments to guide Copilot suggestions. So you're just starting out a new project. For example, we've just got an empty JavaScript file here. So if we command slash and we start writing out, and this is something you would do when you code normally, is maybe just start laying some comments out for what it is you want to build. So we might have, we need write a function that sorts an array of, yeah, perfect, okay. And then, so because we've written this comment, now you see it's already beginning to suggest code for us. So we can simply hit tab to accept that. And of course, it's going to see that there's more to come. Now it's getting more context. It's even writing additional comments for us and suggesting an entire block of code. So you can hit tab, accept that. Or if we, let's just command Z and undo. So, okay, so we haven't accepted that yet. Let me jump back over to our README. So the other thing, besides all these tips we've got here, and we'll dive into these a little further, but if you're just getting started and not familiar just yet with all the keyboard shortcuts, we've put together a cheat sheet to help you out. So a lot of the commonly used things, like obviously tab to accept a suggestion, control space or command space to open up, to trigger Copilot suggestions, escape to get out of it. Because sometimes you're in here and just delete all this and go back. So sometimes you just want to keep working and you've got all this suggestion your way and you don't want to do it. That's not what you're after. Escape clears it so you can think and do what you want to do. Okay. Now, another good one, Command I or Control Alt I if you're on Windows to open up the inline chat if you're working in some existing code. So let's just get there. Yeah, give us a little block of code. So what you can do is, maybe you've got an issue right here. You want to dig into this. So Command I will open up an inline chat right here where I can ask it to explain what this loop is doing, or refactor some code to make it more efficient or whatever. So we can do that. It's thinking. It's thinking a long time. So I guess it's given us some commands up here to potentially try. Oh, there we go. And now we're getting our response. And so you get this inline, which especially if you're in a large code base and you're trying to understand what something's doing, diving into a new code base, especially, it can help you kind of figure out what's going on. Now, obviously, this is just our little sorting thing that we generated, but you can see it gives a pretty in-depth explanation of what's going on here. Okay, so that's inline, and you can use that to make code edits, any of the things that you might want to do with Copilot. So now the next one I want to point out is when you're getting suggestions, is this here, to cycle through suggestions. So this is the one that, maybe you don't like the code that it gave you as an example here. So let's just get it to give us another suggestion. So this shortcut here, Alt plus the closing square bracket if you're on Windows, and Option with the square bracket on Mac. So let's just Okay, so I'm just going to hit Option, and it's only got one suggestion here. But if there's multiple suggestions available, that's how you can cycle through them. Okay, so those are good. Boy, I keep clicking on that wrong one. Let's look at the pretty version. All right, agent feature you can find from the command palette. You can also just open up your chat. So when you open Copilot chat, of course, we touched on this in the beginning. We want to make sure that you've selected agent if you're looking for agent mode functionality, which I find is pretty much the only one I really use at this point. But I suppose if you're just wanting to be careful and not accidentally edit the code base or something, maybe ask would be good. Not sure where edit falls in between those. It's a little confusing. But there we go. We talked about inline suggestions. You start typing a comment, it can suggest a whole block of code. Slash commands and hash commands. So what that's referring to is if I'm in the chat, I don't have a lot of options right now because there's no context, but it will give me different commands that I could potentially use there, and the hash commands as well. So something that you might commonly use in the hash commands is fetch. So if you're working on something really new and you need it to use the latest documentation, because you got to remember these models were trained some time ago. So if it's latest cutting edge, it might not have the proper documentation. So you can go find the documentation page that you want it to follow, tell it to fetch, give it the URL, and get that added into your context so that it knows what is the current docs for that. What are the current correct methods or naming or whatever configuration, whatever it is you happen to be working on. Okay, and then we get into, so that's different tools, slash commands, hash commands, writing good prompts. And this will kind of get reiterated continuously as we do things, but be specific. Provide detailed instructions to guide Copilot. So the other thing I would say is give context. So okay, next bullet point, use context. You know, give it examples of the type of code you want it to write. If you if you're trying to use it to handle some repetitive task to speed that up for you, show it the first one that you've already done that's working so that it can give you outputs in the same code style. Now, if you're not getting exactly what you want, that's not the end game. Continue the conversation, iterate on your prompt, ask it to change things or tweak things to suit your liking better. So don't try to do it all in one prompt. Iterate little bits at a time. And then we've got, you know, a bunch of best practices and a section on writing tests with Copilot, etc. So there's the cheat sheet. Also some more resources that we've provided. So as you start using Copilot Agent, you might want to generate larger amounts of work in one shot. So one good way to do that is to use a product requirements document. Now, this is something you might have in a regular development flow also. So you can bring this in and make your Copilot agent aware of it. You can add it to their context. We'll get into adding context in a bit when we get into the chat. But we've provided an example product requirements document to kind of give you an idea of things that you might put in one and how you can describe it. And especially for Copilot, tables like this, the functional specs of every little action that a user might take and what sort of result you want your program to deliver upon those actions. As if you detail these out, then Copilot can give you very good results in building it out. So here's a little example kind of just of what you might write up about our example tutorial for the Tech Meme Generator API. And then we've also included a template. We'll look at the pretty version that you can use to kind of fill out and get you jump started on a product requirement document for your own projects. Okay, so all these things are in the repo. You can just clone it, use what you would like. Now let's go back to our main README. So we've covered the extra documentation. We'll get to the tutorial here in just a moment. We'll dive in and start building that. I just want to finish going through this main README, give you an idea all the things that are here. You can dig in depth on your own. But so we covered how to use the agent feature, tips and tricks for power users. This section is stacked with things that you can do. Add the entire code base to context. Okay, so let's open up chat here. What this is talking about here is when you've got the chat open, add context. So a simple one, if you want to just add your whole project so it can understand what you're doing and what you're working on, is just simply click add context and come up here and choose code base. Okay, now that's added the code base as context. So now any of my conversation, it's going to be able to go and look at everything I have in here when formulating its response. So I think that's kind of self-explanatory why that would be beneficial. Just as with a human, if they have better context of what we're working on, they can give better answers. If you're working with databases, dive into MCP servers and model context protocols. It can be super powerful on that. That's a topic of its own. I think we'll tackle another day, but know that it's out there. Use slash commands in chat. We talked about that earlier, but there are, once you're in a working project, we'll see that there's slash generate, slash explain, refactor, debug to get you more specific context for the help that you're looking for in that chat. Again, with the hash commands, we went over that just a moment ago. Version control awareness, so you can prompt Copilot to help you write better commit messages. So we can all definitely write better commit messages, and our future self will thank us. Team collaboration, using the PRD template. We just touched on that a minute ago. This is another one. So this is an external resource. Explore the Copilot Chat Cookbook. This is a link to a bunch of different recipes. In fact, let's get a browser open here. And show you what that is. Drag that over. So this is on the GitHub Docs. It's a Copilot Chat Cookbook, and it's got a bunch of example prompts on how you can use Copilot to do common tasks. So generating unit tests, improving code readability, debugging invalid JSON, handling API rate limits, fixing lint errors, improving code readability and maintainability, refactoring for performance, refactoring to implement a particular design pattern. So all sorts of handy tasks that, documenting legacy code. Wow, I could have used that a million times over the years. How many times you dive into a legacy code base completely blind and you're just peppering logs everywhere to figure out what's going on. Explaining legacy code. So those are great examples right there for anybody working. Most businesses have mountains of legacy code that they operate on. So generating unit tests, creating mock objects, writing discussions or blog posts, to help expand and figure out what's going on in your project. So I put that link in there as well. I thought that's super handy. We don't need that right now. You can dig into that on your own. All right, a little bit about best practices, writing tests with Copilot, because I think, we all have that tendency to maybe slack a bit when it comes time to test writing, and it's a really very useful practice that why don't we lean on Copilot to help us do a better job of. All right, practice exercises. So we've got just a couple simple examples. I think at this point we could go ahead and dive into the Tech Meme Generator API tutorial and see how we can walk through building that with the help of Copilot, and kind of talk about some different approaches as we go. So we've already got our agent open here. I'm just going to close this. Don't save, don't care about that. We don't need our README. We need our tutorial, which would be this one. Okay. So let's get our chat back opened up here. And we're just going to build a very simple REST API that delivers a tech-related text meme. And we're not setting up a database or anything. That's kind of beyond the scope of this particular tutorial. The point of this is to give you tips to get moving faster with Copilot. So we could go step by step and generate these little bits. Because this is simple enough, I'm actually going to jump ahead to this step here, and we'll just grab this prompt right here. Generate a basic Express server that listens on port 3000 and has a little welcome message, you know, kind of our hello world for any API, you know, a basic Express server, hello world sort of thing. So I'm going to, nope. I'm going to actually copy that and then paste in. Okay, generate a basic Express server, and let's see what Copilot comes back with. Now, hopefully it doesn't get confused because I already put an example in here. Let's see if it'll create another one in our workspace. If not, we can open a new project or get rid of that. Well, let's see what happens here. Okay, so it's telling us it already exists because we did that the other day. The code already fulfills our requests. Okay, so I guess what we should do is let's just copy this whole tutorial README so we have it for reference. Let's see, and then we'll shut this down, create a new folder, and we'll do Copilot API example, just some new folder, and we'll drop that into VS Code. New file, we'll just make a README .md that we can paste our tutorial into. Okay, so now we've got our README back, and we'll have a clean working context. So we have no file. Here's our file tree. The only thing we've got is this README that we've written. Now we're going to go ahead and try that again. Let's grab this command here. So we can skip these unless you just want to go single step by step. But let's show a little more advanced usage. Now see, when you first open it in a new project, you notice it's defaulted to ask. So make sure you switch to agent and then give it our first command here and see what it asks us to do. Okay, so open an empty directory. So I'm just going to click continue. And actually, I just want to do it in the folder that we are in. So let's just cancel and see if it'll continue. Because really, I just want it to do it right. Yeah, see, it's doing it. Okay. Okay, so the basic Express server has been created in the server.js file, which we've got here. Great. Listens on port 3000. So now we could open our terminal up and do node server.js and start that up. But let's go ahead and continue, because the next step, we're going to have it set up nodeman so that we don't have to continuously restart the server. So rather than having to go look at configuration, everything, we're just going to take this prompt again and tell it to set up nodeman so that we don't have to constantly update the server. So npm init and save OK. Continue with that. That's fine. Now let's see if it will. Okay, good. It did pick up. So yes, we want to update package.json to have a script. Yes, please. Okay, because we want it to do this step here. We want it to add this script so that we can just do npm run dev. So there we go. It's showing us our next update. Instead of start, now we have dev to use nodeman for development. All right, now it even gives us this command, which we can inject into the terminal here. Okay, and start our server up. Uh-oh. What do we think happened? App crashed waiting for file changes before starting. Module not found. Oh, it's why does it have example/server? Cannot find express. Let's look. Huh. Okay, so let's give it the error and see what it thinks went wrong. I think maybe we still need to install something. What do we got in package.json? Nodeman. Okay, so it never installed Express. All right, or we never installed Express. But let's say that we're just confused. We don't know like what's going on. Let's copy our error here. So obviously we know it can't find Express. And we can just say, getting this error starting dev server. And let's see if it'll give us the command. Okay, so we're just going to paste in what we got. And this might be, you know, if you're working in the browser, you might be copying the error out of the browser console. But in the event that you don't understand what's gone wrong, this is kind of the process to lean on Copilot and look, it figured out, yeah, okay, we didn't install Express. So it's asking us to run commands in the terminal. Of course, good practice, and I'm glad that it asks us for permission first. So we're going to go ahead and click continue and let it run that command. All right. Let me try it again. What interrupted it? It looks like it ran to me. Well, let's go ahead and run it again and see. All right. So now it sees success. Now we can try our npm run dev again. And voila, we get our server running on port 3000. Okay, so now to test our API, so one key thing about using Copilot in agent mode, you notice we're able to run these files as though they have been saved. You've got this little square with a save, and we can make changes ourselves as well to files. And like say we want to change this to welcome to the meme server, and we can save. Okay, so you notice the X turned to a circle showing that we had unsaved changes. We can go ahead and save. Nodeman restarted the server, and yet I haven't kept any of Copilot's generated changes yet. And that's, I think, a key point of using this effectively is don't jump on clicking keep. You can actually go out and test what you've built before deciding whether or not to keep those changes, because if something's not working right, you want to continue the conversation over here with your Copilot agent and get it working before you go and keep those changes. Because you can also undo and take a totally different approach, or just decide you don't like its suggestion, you're going to write it yourself, whatever. So now to test that, I guess here's one more extension that I would recommend installing. So Postman, you can obviously use the regular app, but I find it quite handy for this to just use it right in VS Code. So you can find that extension, come in the extension marketplace and search for Postman, get the official Postman VS Code extension right here, and that's what we're going to use to now test our API server. So new HTTP request, just a simple GET request to HTTP localhost 3000 / there we go. All right, that's all we're going to do. We're going to click send and get this terminal out of the way. In fact, we don't really need to see that at all at the moment. We've got our prettified response. Welcome to the meme server. Okay, so now we can continue on with our chat. So let's go back to our chat. Now, of course, I have this kind of expanded so that it's large to make it a little easier to view. But one thing I found when I'm just working on a project myself and I can use multiple monitors for my previews and things, I'll actually open this sidebar here and put the chat over here a lot of times. Like so. And so then what that gives me is I can have my chat over here, I can have my file tree or Postman or whatever else I've got going on over here. So now for the tutorials, I'm going to drop it back over here just because I can keep things a little bigger and easier for you all to read. So we've installed Nodeman, we've got our server running. Now, of course, if we were building something that we wanted to keep right now, we would want to set up Git and be making our incremental changes and staging and making meaningful commit messages. Being that we're just talking about how to use Copilot right now, I'm not going to spend the time on setting up Git and doing that. We're just going to keep rocking along. So we've got our server running. We now want to create our meme endpoint. Okay, so this is roughly what we want it to create, but we're just going to go ahead and prompt it again. Okay, write an Express.js route that returns a random item from an array of tech memes as a JSON response. So that's all we're going to give it. Okay. And what I want to do too is make sure we have this file open so that you can see the context is the current file server.js. I want to give it that context when I send it this command and let it do its work. So now we should see it figuring out how to do that and updating server.js. And of course, at this point, I suppose we probably would have already kept those other changes, but rolling right along. The point is learning how to prompt Copilot here. So interestingly, it's creating it slightly different than the first time I ran it. Let's look at our preview. So see here, it created an array. In this response today, it's creating objects that it can return with IDs. But nonetheless, we have a route. It didn't quite get the naming right. It did random meme, but that's okay. We can use that. Or we can say, you know what, I just want this to be meme, and we can edit it right in line and save. And let's test that again. Let's just send /meme, okay, and see if we get a random meme back. We got some JSON with an ID of 5 and a meme object with code never lies. Comments sometimes do. And if we send it again, we get another one. Get commit messages. Final version. Send again. So that should be like. When you fix a bug, and 5 more appear. All right, so pretty simple. You know, I know it's basic, but you get the idea where you can iterate along. I'm going to go ahead and keep these changes so that we see some differences as we go. So now let's move on to a little more challenging step where we're going to kind of expect it to do its own thing and see how this goes. So we're going to generate some tests by just prompting the Copilot agent. So generate unit tests for the meme endpoint in this Express.js app using jest. Include tests for successful responses and error handling. All right, so let's copy that and see what we get here. And again, I want to open this just to make sure we got that context there before running that command, and let it do its thing and see what we get. So, and I mean, this could be very handy, especially like say you're just learning to develop. You need to learn how to write unit tests. This is a great way to get started. It's going to do some heavy lifting, and then you can have it explain what it's built. All right, so let's look at our file tree. It's added a test file. It's got a describe for get. It's still using random meme, so that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and fix that. There and there, since we changed that. Right, because yeah, see, it kept our change. So close. It would have, you know, we're still the developer. We still want to check its work. Of course, we could run these and find out that errors and feed it error messages to, you know, get to that conclusion as well. But so let's go back to our chat here. We've got our test file open. These tests include now. The other thing I see is it obviously hasn't installed dependencies. So you got to kind of watch it. You know, it's requiring super test here. Well, that didn't get installed, so it's going to need that. So you can run the test using jest to ensure, let me know if you need help setting up jest or running the test. I'm just going to say, yes, please help. Okay. Because we'll say, you know, we want this to do the heavy lifting for us. Okay, run this command. Now we're going to get jest and super test. Thank you. Yeah, we knew that was going to be a problem. So got that down in the terminal here. Running. All right. Installation seems to have been interrupted. It looks like it's still running, but we'll go ahead and let you run it again. Okay. So now we should be able to run npx jest to run our tests, and let's see if our tests pass. Ooh, Copilot, 2 failed tests, but that's okay. That's kind of the point of test. Let's see if it's a problem with the test or if it's a problem with our code that the test is going to point out so that we now update our code. So let's give it these errors here. Or let's just come to the little star. So here's another quick tip. If you're in the terminal and you get these little stars at the top of what you're trying to copy back out. Okay, so we got our fails, all this. We're looking to copy these and get some help on this. We can come right here, quick fix, run Copilot debug. Okay. And let it do its thing here. Now it's waiting for us to hit enter. Waiting. Bueller. All right, I'm not going to keep waiting. I'm going to hit Control C. Get out of that. And say, yeah, really, let's just debug this issue here. I'm going to come back over to the chat. Getting these errors in the console. When I run tests. And paste. And see if it can figure out what it's done wrong. I can tell you, for one, it's not handling errors in our meme route. There is 0 error handling. So, and that's the point of these tests. And oh, look at that. Now it's making some changes to server.js. Let's look at the explanation here. Okay, so here's our prompt that we gave it. We gave it the errors that we were receiving. Blah. Okay. The errors you encountered are due to the way server is being started and testing, specifically. Logging after tests are done. Okay. App.address is not a function because supertest expects an instance of express.app, but we're also not exporting. Let's see how now. So it added exporting this. So this is something that the test runner needs. But, you know, say we don't know that. We've never used supertest or we've never used jest, and we've got to figure this out. So it changed the route on us again, back to random meme, but that's okay. We'll just, it really wants it to name that random meme. So we'll let it go ahead and do that, which is going to break its test now. But can it read properties of undefined, reading stack? Okay. So it's made some updates to server.js. Does it not see this because we didn't save our changes? All right, let's at least make the routes match. Meme. All right. And save that. All right, now let's give it a fair shake and run npx-jest again and see if it can get through. All right, so as kind of should do with testing, we're progressing. We've fixed something. One test passed, one failed. All right, so now we can look at it. Okay, should handle errors gracefully. Now, did it make any error handling updates in server.json? It's listening. No, it didn't add error handling yet. Okay, so now we can take this again and say, hey, oh, I'm gonna make this bigger so it's easier to grab that. Okay. Now I get this error. And paste and go and let it go figure out that it needs to add some error handling to the API. And it looks like it's found an issue with the way it wrote the test as well. So now I know we're not diving deep into the code. This isn't really so much about how to use the code as it is how to use the tool. So that's why I'm kind of letting the tool do all the heavy lifting. And hopefully it's helpful to see how you can lean on these tools when you're stuck to get over hurdles that, would otherwise be a real headache working on your own. Okay, so let's get our terminal back out of the way here. It still hasn't added any error handling to the server.js route. So let's prompt it for that. Let's see. So error could occurs because of this in the test. To use a mock express app. Okay, now let's just prompt and say, hey, okay, I see that there's no error handling on the meme route. So what about updating the meme route with error handling? Okay, now I'm going to save that. We'll go ahead and we'll run our test one more time and see how its changes have affected the results. And it made 2 pass. Okay, so this is an instance where it's a good example of you still need to be the developer and be careful what you're accepting as changes, okay? And we haven't kept anything yet, so we can still prompt it to fix things. But if the test is saying it should handle errors gracefully, and we have no error handling in our route, that's not really what we want it to test. So getting meme, we expect it to fetch meme, get a 200 request, have a property of ID, and have a property response body with the property of meme. Okay, we've got those in our object, we know. It should handle errors gracefully, okay? Maybe we're getting this automatically out of Express, but what we really want is to have some custom error handling, okay? So this would be one of those examples where we shouldn't just blindly accept, oh, hey, it's working, test pass, all right, ship it. Let's actually tell it our next prompt here, what about updating the meme route with error handling, and see what it comes back with. Okay, so this is where you still have to be in control, because it'll just go, if you're happy with it, it's happy with it, moving along, and who knows what you're incorporating into your code if you're not double checking it. Okay, so now we've got a try catch, and it's actually doing some error handling that we can see. Okay, so the random route has been updated. Now let's run our tests again and see if they still pass. Okay, 2 tests passed still. And let's prompt it. Do you think the tests are providing solid coverage? And let's see if it can come up with some other alteration. So coverage could be improved by adding tests for edge cases. So maybe you feel like the testing is weak because, your error test was passing without even having error handling. Maybe you're just stuck and not sure, trying to think of edge cases, but, you're writer's block, you can't come up with anything. Keep that conversation going and iterate and ask it to dig deeper. Maybe it'll spar some new ideas for you to prompt it further and generate even more. All right, so edge cases, what happens if the tech memes array is empty? Exactly. Validation. Ensure the response structure is correct. Okay. Verifying the endpoint responds with an acceptable time frame. So that could be a good one. If you have large responses, you might need to be checking that it's not taking forever to get the data back. All right. So anyways, with that, I'm going to keep those and move on. I don't want this to get too terribly long. The point is just to give you some quick tips to get more effective quickly with Copilot, show you how you can use agent mode And as you can see, we've put together a quick little API. We've put some unit tests together, and all we did was prompt the agent to get the code we want. So this puts us in the light of, part of the new paradigm as a developer is that we can do things a lot faster, but that doesn't change the core principle to keep in mind is that we still have to do code review. So we might be doing a lot more code review and a lot less writing of code, but we still need to understand the code. We still need to review the code. We need to follow best practices and use version control and make atomic commits. But we can leverage these tools to move very quickly and get good results. Oh, I don't have the server running. So yeah, that should error. Okay, so that we're still shipping quality code. We're not just blindly infusing unknown errors that somebody else is going to have to debug later on down the road. So I think that's a good place to kind of wrap up. We've built a little project. We've touched on a lot of tooling. Obviously, you could come in here and, maybe ask it to, oh, it added another route. So, here's little bits of cleanup. So like as it edited the code, it created a whole nother route with error handling, but then it left this. So, you could come in here and do, we've got server.js. Let's do a /refactor. Or is it hash? Now let's highlight this code and try an inline command /. Okay, now we get a little more suggestions to choose from, and /tests. Generate unit tests for the selected code. Okay, so this is another way we can go. If we just wrote a new function, we can generate tests for a specific function inline by just highlighting that. And you got to be careful about the responses you get. So you're still the developer. I'm not going to run that. It's not really any point to that. This is just a very crude example of how we can use these tools. Here was our little tutorial. If you want to take this further, we've got some instructions on how you can deploy it to hosting via cPanel. If you've got a cPanel hosting that you can deploy Node applications. If not, you might take a look at hosting.com. Used to be A2 hosting. I've used them for years just for a kind of a playground hosting because you can actually, it's cheap, shared hosting, or they have scalable tiers too. You can get private servers, whatever, but you can get some cheap hosting that you can actually get real experience deploying a Node app, or you can deploy Python apps or Ruby apps. And a lot of the shared hosting when you get into cPanel don't have that. It's one of the things I liked about A2. They recently rebranded to hosting.com instead of A2 hosting. And I've thrown a affiliate link here. If you need hosting, you want to support DevPath, you use that link, we'll get a little commission. Helps feed the fund and keep us making more tutorials. So with that, I'm rambling enough. Let's wrap it up. And I hope you've gotten some good tips out of this. Lots more content to come. Be sure to hit that subscribe, like button if you like the video. Let us know in the comments what else you want to learn, what you like, what you don't like about these videos, so we can keep making you more great content. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.